You said you loved her. You said it felt different, deeper, real. But now that she's gone, why does it feel like withdrawal? Why does the silence burn more than the memories? Why do you feel angry? Instead of heartbroken, what you called love was never about her. It was about how she made you feel about you. Wanted, chosen, important. And when that stopped, you didn't lose her. You lost your reflection in her attention. That's not love, that's ego attachment. Ego attachment doesn't want intimacy. It wants possession. It wants to hold something, not because it honors it, but because it fears what it means to let go. So you stayed, even when the connection faded, even when the tension rose, even when your soul whispered, "This isn't love anymore." Because leaving would have meant admitting you weren't in love with her. You were in love with the version of yourself that she made feel enough. In this video, we're pulling apart the difference between love and ego. We'll look at how men confuse emotional comfort with real connection, and why most relationships feel like loss when in fact they were just control in disguise. You'll learn the 3 signs that you've been calling it love when it was really just your ego trying not to be abandoned. And more importantly, you'll learn how to stop chasing reflections and start building a love that doesn't collapse when she walks away. Because real love isn't about ownership, it's about wholeness. It felt like love. It had the rush, the spark, the late night conversations. You laughed hard, you opened up, you told her things you never told anyone. You swore it was real, because how could it not be? She saw you. She texted first, she leaned in, and somewhere in the glow of connection, you started building something. A story, a future, a feeling you hadn't felt in a long time. But here's the part you don't want to admit. You were more in love with the way she made you feel than with who she actually was. You loved how wanted you felt, how seen, how chosen. You loved the mirror she held up, because in that mirror you looked whole. Not anxious, not overthinking, not invisible. For a while you forgot all your old insecurities, and it felt like healing. But it wasn't healing, it was relief. And relief can feel a lot like love. Then came the shift. The texts slowed down, the compliments faded, the warmth became cooler, more neutral, and suddenly the security you felt turned into tension. You started wondering, did I do something wrong? Is she pulling away? Is she losing interest? And just like that, you weren't in love anymore. You were on edge. Not because she changed, but because the validation stopped. Now, be honest. Was it really love? Or was it your ego finally feeling fed after years of going hungry? Because love doesn't panic when the pace changes. Love doesn't disappear when attention does. Love doesn't demand to be reflected, it's content to just be. But ego needs mirrors. Ego says, if you stop looking at me, I don't know who I am. And that's what most men confuse for romance, a brief moment of emotional stability disguised as soul connection. You weren't in love. You were finally being fed something you hadn't given yourself. Affirmation, significance, worth. She became the IV drip to your identity, and when it slowed, your system screamed like it was dying. But what if it wasn't love breaking? What if it was ego detox? It's easy to call it love, especially when she smiles at your jokes, when she texts made it home safe, when she pulls you closer in the middle of the night. You tell yourself, this is it, this is what I've been looking for, this is real. But pause, zoom out. Is it love, or is it ego relief? See, ego doesn't want to love, it wants to feel secure. And when someone shows up, pays attention, laughs at your texts, chooses you back, your ego exhales like, finally, I matter again. You confuse that exhale with love. But it's not love. It's permission to relax. for now, until she replies slower, until she seems less excited, until she stops mirroring back the version of you that felt enough. Then ego panics. But love doesn't panic. Love holds, love adapts, love flows with uncertainty. Ego can't. Ego needs control. Ego needs reinforcement. Ego doesn't want her to be herself. It wants her to be reliable feedback. That's the trap. You think you're in love with her, but you're in love with who you think you are when she sees you. You don't want connection. You want confirmation. So you love her, as long as she plays the role, as long as she keeps validating, responding, reassuring. But the moment she steps out of script, the spell breaks. And now it hurts. Not because she betrayed you, but because your mirror cracked. Here's how you know it wasn't love. If you need constant affirmation to feel close, it's ego. If silence feels like punishment, it's ego. If you can't sit with her autonomy without questioning your worth, it's ego. Love can exist without certainty. Ego can't. And the most dangerous part, ego is a brilliant actor. It will write poetry, send flowers, say, I just want to be close to you. But what it really means is, I need you to keep reflecting me the way I like seeing myself. The moment she stops reflecting that, the love turns sour, cold, controlling. Because it was never about her. It was always about you. So next time you feel the ache, don't just ask, why did she pull back? Ask instead, was I loving her, or just loving the feelings she gave my ego? That answer changes everything. She felt safe, her presence, her attention, her warmth. It wasn't just attraction, it was relief. Relief from the noise inside your own mind. Relief from the ache of never enough. Relief from the weight you didn't know you were carrying until she helped you put it down temporarily. And in that relief, you mistook calm for connection, silence for intimacy, familiarity for love. But here's the truth. You weren't in love with her. You were in love with the version of you that existed only when she was around. You didn't feel grounded. You felt validated. And that difference, it matters. Because validation fades, people shift, life interrupts. And when it did, when her tone cooled, when the replies slowed, when she said, I just need space, you panicked. Not because you lost her, but because you lost your anchor. The emotional scaffolding you'd built around her presence came crashing down. You see, love doesn't require you to feel constant safety. It invites you to build it within yourself. But ego wants outsourced safety. It says, if she's warm, I'm good. If she's silent, I'm spiraling. If she's here, I have value. If she leaves, I'm lost. That's not love. That's dependency dressed in emotional poetry. Let's be honest. When she pulled away, it wasn't heartbreak you felt. It was withdrawal. Because your nervous system was never trained to feel regulated on its own. She became the regulator. And when she left, your system screamed like it had been abandoned. But she didn't abandon you. You just never learned to hold yourself without her. That's the illusion of safety. Thinking you're in love when you're just avoiding the discomfort of standing alone. Love says I choose you, but I'm whole without you. Ego says, if you leave, I don't know who I am. And that's why her distance felt like destruction. Not because she took something from you, but because you had nothing solid beneath her. The work isn't in getting her back. The work is in getting your center back. So the next time someone pulls away, pause. Don't ask, how do I win her attention again? Ask, why did I collapse the moment it disappeared? Because that question leads you home. You told yourself you were giving. generous, emotionally available. You showed up, you listened, you sent sweet messages, you asked how she was feeling, you held space, but deep down, you were keeping score. Maybe not out loud, maybe not in a spreadsheet, but somewhere inside you had an invisible balance sheet that said, I'm doing this, so I match to you. I'm showing up, so you'll stay. I'm loving you, so you'll love me back. That's not love, that's performance. And performance love always comes with a hidden contract. I'll give you warmth, but don't get cold. I'll be understanding, but don't pull away. I'll hold space, but don't make me sit in uncertainty. And when she inevitably does any of those things, the contract gets violated. And now you're upset. Not because you were truly hurt, but because your return on emotional investment didn't pay out. That's the dangerous thing about ego-driven love. It looks generous, but it's transactional. You don't offer love, you trade it. You give attention, hoping it will guarantee closeness. You share vulnerability, expecting it will earn security. You're not loving her, you're investing in her to protect your own emotional stock. So what happens when she doesn't perform back? You get resentful, withdrawn. You call her distant, ungrateful, cold. But really, you're just hurt that the contract was one-sided, a contract she never signed. Because love that comes with strings was never love. It was leverage. Real love doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't measure. It doesn't demand reciprocity to remain consistent. It gives freely, and it releases freely, because it's not afraid of not being needed. But when love is wrapped in fear, every gesture becomes a performance. Every silence becomes a threat. Every delay in reply becomes personal. Because ego isn't trying to love, it's trying to stay safe. So ask yourself, was I showing up because I wanted to love her, or because I was afraid of not being loved back? That question separates lovers from performers. And performers always burn out because their love isn't fueled by depth. It's fueled by outcome. Terrorist ant, I love you. It sounds beautiful. It feels real. It's what we all want to hear and say. But sometimes those three words come with a silent clause. Sticks. So you can't leave. So you must stay the same. So you owe me consistency. And when you strip away the romance, what you're left with isn't love, it's control. Control isn't always loud. It doesn't always shout or demand. Sometimes it whispers softly through expectations. I've shown up for you. So you owe me stability. I've chosen you. So don't pull away. You call it commitment. But what you really want is will it follow guarantee. And when she shifts, when her energy changes, when she needs space, when she stops responding like she used to, you feel it as betrayal. Not because she broke a promise, but because she disrupted your emotional agreement, one she never signed. And here's the hard truth. If your version of love needs the other person to never change, never waver, never question, then you don't want a partner, you want a mirror, a predictable, obedient reflection of your emotional needs. That earthen board. So when she pulls back, you panic, you double down, you try harder, you say, let me remind you how much I care, let me prove I'm different, let me fix whatever I did. But underneath it all isn't care, it's a desperate plea. Please come back to playing the role that made me feel safe. And when she doesn't, you feel abandoned. Not because she rejected your love, but because she stepped out of a script you secretly needed her to follow. The key to. This is the moment most men miss. Love doesn't guarantee access. Love doesn't obligate anyone to stay. Love doesn't entitle you to someone else's emotional availability. The second, your love demands constant presence, predictable behavior, or emotional submission, it's no longer love, it's in an possession. And possession poisons what was once pure. True love allows movement. It respects space. It says, if you need to go, I will still stand whole. Not out of pride, but out of presence. Because when love turns into control, the other person stops feeling safe. Not because you're loud, but because your need becomes a burden. They never agreed to carry. So ask yourself, would you still love her if she changed? If she took space? If she no longer fit the role you needed her to play? Because if the answer is no, then what you lost wasn't love. It was control disguised as intimacy. She said she wasn't feeling it anymore. She said she needed space. She said something changed. And just like that, you cracked. The air left your chest. Your brain went blank. And all the strength you thought you built, gone. You called it heartbreak, but what it really was identity collapse. Because when she walked away, she didn't just leave the relationship, she took the reflection with her. The version of you that felt wanted, chosen, seen. And now you're left with questions that echo like alarms. Was I not enough? Was it something I said? Did I do everything wrong? But here's the truth. It's not the rejection that broke you. It's what the rejection interrupted. Your entire sense of value was tied to her attention, her responses, her emotional presence. And when that disappeared, you didn't just lose connection, you lost self-definition. This is where most men fall apart, not because they love deeply, but because they attached recklessly. They built their emotional home inside someone else's feedback loop. And when that loop broke, everything collapsed. Let's call it what it is. You made her presence your permission to feel enough. You made her affection your justification to keep showing up. You made her love your oxygen. So when she walked away, it wasn't just a breakup, it was a system failure. You didn't just lose her, you lost the scaffolding that was holding up your self-worth. And now you sit in the rubble calling it love lost. But was it love? Or just the only place your ego felt safe? Was it connection? Or just distraction from your own inner void? Was it depth? Or just dependency wrapped in good intentions? Because if it was love, why did it fall apart the moment she stopped performing? Here's the truth. What collapsed wasn't the relationship. It was the illusion. The illusion that you were whole only when she was near. The illusion that being wanted equals being worthy. The illusion that presence equals permanence. And now you get to choose. Do you rebuild that illusion with someone new, or do you finally be yourself so no one else has to hold you up again? This isn't the end. It's the reset, the unmasking, the actual beginning. Because once you've felt the collapse and survived it, you're no longer building from need. You're building from knowing. Love doesn't need to be reminded every day that it's real. It doesn't need a text every hour. It doesn't die in silence. It doesn't panic in distance. Real love breathes, it expands, it holds. But ego needs to be fed constantly, predictably, loudly. Ego says, if you don't reply, it means you're losing interest. If you don't validate me, I must be slipping. If you don't show up the same way every time, something's wrong. And when ego doesn't get fed, it starts spinning. You tell yourself, I'm just checking in. I just need to know where we stand. I just want to feel close. But what you really want is confirmation. Proof that you're still enough, still chosen, still wanted. That's not love. That's emotional survival. It's using another person as a mirror to stabilize your sense of self. And here's the thing, the moment love becomes dependent on constant reassurance, it's no longer love. It's a coping mechanism. Real love doesn't flinch in silence. It doesn't collapse in ambiguity. It doesn't require performance to feel secure. It simply is. It says, I trust this, even if it's quiet, even if it's shifting, even if we're both in process. That kind of love only shows up when you stop needing to be reflected to feel valid. Because when you love from ego, every small change feels like danger. A shorter reply must be rejection, less emojis. She's pulling away, didn't initiate first, she's lost interest. But when you love from truth, from fullness, you don't read into every fluctuation. You observe, you breathe, you stay rooted. Because love that needs proof every single day was never secure to begin with. And if your love collapses without immediate feedback, that love wasn't built on depth, it was built on dependency. So here's the shift. Stop chasing reassurance. Start cultivating resonance. Love that lasts doesn't scream, look at me. It whispers, I'm here, even when no one's clapping. Ask yourself, do I love her presence? Or do I need her validation? Would I still feel steady if she didn't reaffirm me today? Because the love that's real, the kind that holds and expands, doesn't need constant approval to stay alive. It needs only this, a center within you that doesn't vanish when no one's watching. Not all love comes from wholeness. Some love comes from wounds, from absence, from lack, from the aching belief that something's always missing unless someone else fills it. That kind of love feels intense, immediate, consuming. But it's not love, it's longing, wrapped in connection, fueled by fear. Wounded love says, I need you to stay or I'll unravel. If you stop loving me, I'll lose my value. If you change, I'll collapse. It sounds poetic, it sounds romantic, it's even celebrated in songs and films. But it's not beautiful. It's burdensome, because what it really means is I'm not okay unless you're here to hold my pieces together. Now compare that to love from wholeness. Love from wholeness doesn't chase, it doesn't grasp, it doesn't demand constant confirmation. It offers, it gives, it witnesses. And if that love isn't returned, it doesn't crumble. Because it wasn't built on need, it was built on knowing. Here's the key distinction. Wounded love asks, what can I get from you to stop feeling broken? Wholeness asks, what can I share with you from the overflow of who I am? One drains, the other expands. But most relationships break not because people stop loving, but because their wounds start driving. Two people meet, they connect, but instead of holding space for healing, they make each other responsible for completing what was never whole to begin with. And when the other person can't deliver that, they feel abandoned. But the truth is, no one abandoned you. You just leaned on someone who was never meant to carry your unfinished pieces. Matey seemed six-take banter. So ask yourself, when I love, am I giving from fullness, or am I offering from emptiness, hoping someone will fill me back? Because if your love exhausts people, if it clings, if it panics at silence, it's not romantic, it's wounded. The work is not in getting better at love, it's in becoming whole so your love doesn't feel like a demand. Because when you arrive full, you don't chase, you don't perform, you don't beg, you invite, you share, you shine. And if someone walks away, it hurts, yes, but it doesn't take you with them. Because you no longer love to be filled, you love to be felt. Breakups hurt, no question. But if we're being honest, they don't always hurt because of lost love. They hurt because of wounded ego. Because ego wasn't prepared to lose access, to lose reflection, to lose control. Love can grieve and let go. Ego needs to hold on not to the person, but to the identity. It built around that person's attention. When they pull back, it's not just loss, it's erasure. Suddenly, you're not the one. You're not special. You're not chosen. And to the ego, that's unbearable. That's why breakups often feel like personal failure. Even when you know it wasn't aligned. Even when you saw the signs. Even when you weren't truly happy anymore. Because ego turns endings into proof. See, you're still not enough. You weren't worthy of staying. You must have done something wrong. But these thoughts don't come from your heart. They come from your affect of attachment to being affirmed. Here's the twist. Most of the pain after a breakup isn't about the person. It's about what you made them mean. They weren't just a partner. They were a mirror, a source of stability, a shortcut to significance. And when that source vanishes, the ego spins. How do I get them back? How do I prove they were wrong? How do I reclaim what I lost? But what you really lost was the illusion that someone else's presence equals your value. This is why some people rebound fast, why they post cryptic quotes, why they chase attention. It's not healing, it's ego trying to rebuild its image. Not, I miss her, but I need to feel important again. And that need turns heartbreak into obsession, grief into strategy, love into revenge. Bite is virus, but real healing doesn't sound like revenge. It sounds like silence, stillness, sitting with the ache without trying to perform your way out of it. It sounds like saying, she's gone, but I'm still here. And that has to be enough for now. Because until your worth is no longer dependent on who stays or leaves, you'll always mistake love for ego regulation. You'll chase reconnection not because you love them, but because you don't yet know how to stand without their eyes on you. The breakup didn't break you. It exposed what was already fragile. Now's your chance to rebuild without needing anyone else to hold the mirror. Because the moment you stop chasing reflection, you start becoming real. I just need closure. It sounds reasonable, mature, emotionally intelligent. But more often than not, it's not your heart asking for peace. It's your ego demanding control. Because real closure doesn't come from answers. It comes from acceptance. But the ego can't sit with not knowing. It can't tolerate open loops. It wants clarity labels resolution not for healing, but for certainty. So you reach out, ask for a conversation, a reason, a breakdown of what went wrong. You say, I just want to understand, but what you really mean is help me feel like I wasn't the problem. Tell me something that makes this feel less personal. Give me back a sense of power over this ending. And if they won't give that to you, you spiral. You replay every moment. You invent explanations. You Google anxious attachment. You read Reddit threads at 2 a.m. Because uncertainty is unbearable when your ego was invested in control. But here's the truth. Most people don't leave with perfect words. They drift. They shift. They close emotionally before they close verbally. And you trying to extract a final statement won't change that. You think closure is a gift they owe you, but often it's a boundary they're choosing for themselves. I think you don't need their explanation to validate your experience. You don't need their words to make your pain real. You don't need a final message to begin your healing. That's the ego talking, the part of you that says, if they don't explain this, I'll never feel complete. But ask yourself, have explanations ever made the pain go away? Or did they just buy you a moment of mental relief before the ache returned? The truth is, closure is internal. It's not about what they say, it's about what you choose to believe in their absence. That's where the shift happens. You don't need a conclusion to start a new chapter. You don't need their words to rewrite your own. You just need one thing. The courage to accept that not all stories end neatly, and that's okay. Because peace isn't given, it's claimed. So the next time you feel the urge to ask, to text, to clarify, pause. Ask yourself, do I want the truth or do I want relief? Because if it's relief, it's not closure. It's ego begging for another round of control. Let it go. Let you go. Because the person who left might not return. But the version of you that doesn't need an answer anymore, that's the one who finally starts to live. So now you see it. The pattern, the craving, the collapse. You've seen how your love was laced with fear, how your care carried control, how your presence was powered by performance. And it's not shameful, it's human. But now that you've seen it, you don't unsee it. Now you get to choose differently. This is the shift from ego to essence. From do you still want me to I still know who I am. From please reflect me to I bring wholeness into this space. From reaching to radiating. Ego love says, if I do enough, I'll be enough. Essence says, I already am. Ego needs to be chosen. Essence chooses itself first and always. Ego reacts. Essence responds. Ego grasps. Essence holds. Ego performs. Essence exists. Yeah. So what does love look like when it comes from essence? It's calmer, quieter, less dramatic, but infinitely deeper. It doesn't rush in to fill a void. It doesn't bend to be wanted. It offers, it observes, it allows. And if the other person doesn't choose it back, it still remains grounded. Because it was never about them. It was about who you chose to be, regardless of the outcome. That's power, not dominance, not bravado. Real power, the ability to stay rooted in your truth while giving someone else the freedom to choose you, or not. Because the one who stays aligned when they're not being rewarded, that's the one who stops loving from ego. This shift is quiet. It's not some grand announcement. It's in the tiny moments. You feel the urge to reach and you breathe instead. You want to double text, but you go for a walk. You think she's losing interest, and you remember, I haven't lost myself. That's essence in motion. That's presence as practice. You won't be perfect. You'll still flinch sometimes, still want to be seen, still ache. But now you'll recognise the voice. This is ego. And with that awareness, you'll return to the place inside you that never needed fixing. Just remembering, you thought you lost love, but what you really lost was the illusion, the story, the script, the safety blanket you wrapped around her presence. You lost the version of yourself that only felt enough when she looked at you a certain way, replied a certain speed, made you feel seen. But love never left, because love, real love, was never dependent on whether she stayed. It wasn't in the rhythm of the texts or the warmth in her voice. It was always deeper, quieter, inside you. You just hadn't met it yet. What you call love was often ego playing dress up, wearing poetry, saying all the right things, chasing emotional highs and calling it destiny. But when it didn't last, when it didn't match your timeline, your ego screamed. She was the one. She changed. She gave up. But what if she didn't? What if she simply stopped holding up the mirror and all you were left with was you? That's not loss. That's a gift. A painful one, yes, but pure. Because now you don't just grieve her. You grieve who you thought you had to be to feel worthy of her. You grieve the illusion that love meant control, that presence meant permanence, that connection meant ownership. And in that grief you grow. Because the man who realizes he didn't lose love, he lost illusion. That man begins to build differently, slower, quieter, stronger. He no longer performs. He becomes. He no longer proves. He embodies all. And when love returns, if it returns, he welcomes it not as a saviour, but as a mirror he no longer needs to depend on. You didn't lose love. You lost the version of you that couldn't survive without being chosen. And that version needed to go, so something deeper could finally take its place. You didn't lose her. You didn't lose love. You lost the illusion that someone else had the power to make you feel whole. The real pain wasn't the breakup. It was the unravelling of a false identity, one built on attention validation and control wrapped in affection. You called it love, but it was fear of not being enough, fear of not being chosen, fear of facing yourself without a mirror. But now you've faced it, and the man who can sit in that raw, unfiltered silence without blaming, chasing or collapsing, that man is finally free. Because real love doesn't grow from desperation, it grows from depth. Let me ask you this. What's one belief about love that completely shattered after your hardest breakup? The story you used to hold that no longer holds you. Share it in the comments. You never know, your insight might be the medicine another man needs today.